Case of continuing between the Indian and Chinese troops in Chumar. This goes beyond an intrusion by the PLA. About 100 troops are lined up on either side.
Now, you were the army commander during the Chumar incident along the LAC in 2014. What were the key lessons learned from that encounter? Because I think that was the kind of genesis of the recent problem.
So let me just briefly describe what happened. So it was in September that suddenly we saw about 500 Chinese soldiers, along with they came with some earth moving and road construction equipment, and tried to build a road on our side of the line of actual control. And the minute we saw this, the local post commander there immediately reacted. We stopped the dozers from coming inside, and we quickly built up our forces. And then there were thousands of soldiers facing off each other at a distance of maybe 1 or 2 yards, and the situation carried on, over the next 2 weeks. What lesson we learned? One is that you need to stand firm against the Chinese. This was the time, and I think it's important also to put this in context. This was the time when we had these very massive floods in the Kashmir Valley. So the road coming from Srinagar to Ladakh, Leh, was completely cut off. And this is the main sort of road for movement into Leh and Ladakh. So Leh was completely sort of cut off from Srinagar side. And Xi Jinping was to visit India in the next 2 days. So maybe, I can't say, but my own sense is, the PLA thought this is an opportune time, that they can't bring in too many reinforcements, and the fact that there's a high-level political meeting which is due, perhaps the Indian army will not respond very strongly and, accept this. So one lesson is, you need to stand completely firm with whatever they do.
There is no guarantee of the winnability of war if China decides to go to war with India. And even if there's a stalemate on the Himalayan front, I tell you, the world will take India as the victor and not China. China doesn't even have the experience. After 1979, they haven't fought a war anywhere. The troops are not experienced. What you're seeing is only on video screens, tremendous projection of the fighting which takes place in Tibet or in other parts of China. It's all projection. China is using information warfare to fight its wars. Cognitive warfare. There are 3 warfare strategy of 2003. Legal warfare, media warfare, cyber warfare. Right? So these are the things which are now, unfortunately, because of that, this little tiff takes place, standoffs take place in the Ladakh from time to time. And one of the important things we have to remember is, till today, in 21 or 22 meetings that we have had since 1993 about the line of actual control, China has not acceded to our demand that they provide us with one marked map of their perception of the line of actual control. They are not giving us. Why? Because they want this problem to persist forever until they feel the asymmetry between India and China will be so high that India cannot at all ever interfere in the maritime zone. But I don't think that time will come.
China uses cartography to assert and project power in its region. Because as clean as this map looks, within it, there's actually a lot going on. Border tug-of-wars, fake islands, a 10th dash on a line in the ocean, barbed wire-wrapped clubs, and proxy wars. It's the perfect example of how maps aren't just maps. They're tools of national power.
You're right that the Chinese military, in terms of equipment, in terms of technology, is better than what India has. They even have sort of better infrastructure on their side. But the fact, Mohan, is you're fighting at altitudes, which are 15, 16, 17,000 feet. You're fighting on the Himalayan watershed, which is the highest mountain range in the world. So, there's still on what machines and technology can do, and a lot will depend on what sort of soldiers there are. And then you mentioned something. As I said, I don't want to say that the soldiers are not professional, but there are issues. So there is conscription system. So there are conscripts. You talked about a one-child policy. Also, what and this is from some research that has been done, that the PLA is not really getting the best of the people because because population is shrinking, people are looking for better opportunities rather than going into the PLA. And our soldiers, as I mentioned before, are battle hardened, have experienced the kind of conditions that exist. Some of the senior lot which would be there in units would perhaps have seen these conditions maybe 2 or 3 times. I mean, I myself, in the first 20 years of my service, I had served on the UP-Tibet border against China. I had served in Sikkim. I had served in Nagaland. So, the conditions under which we operate make you actually much better equipped to handle these situations.
As I said, there is asymmetry between Indian and Chinese military power. So there is asymmetry. But it is also true that on the line of actual control, the border, the de facto border between China and India, there is a fairly good balance of power, I think. I think India has, over the last 20, 25 years, has been building its own infrastructure on the border. That has been accelerated during Prime Minister Modi's term in office over the last 10 years. So India has been building up its own infrastructure on the border. Indian army is in many ways more experienced in mountain warfare than the Chinese military. Indian army has more practical experience in mountain warfare. And after all, Indian military has held the Siachen Glacier for a long time. And it's not an easy task to operate at such a high altitude. So Indian military certainly is a force to contend with, and a military also needs timely supplies of military hardware and other logistics. So logistics infrastructure has improved. So as far as the border is concerned, I'm not too worried about India's ability to handle China on the border. But overall, particularly when it comes to maritime competition, we know that China has been building maritime infrastructure, dual-use infrastructure, all around the Indian Ocean, all around India's neighborhood. And any war between China and India, any future war, is unlikely to remain a land war, unlikely to remain just a border war, unlike in the past. Any future war is likely to be, fought both on land and on the sea. So maritime capabilities of China have also grown rapidly. India has now begun to pay more attention to the Navy, but Indian Navy for a long time has received a second-class treatment compared to the Army. But Indian Navy is now developing. India is now building more ships and submarines, acquiring more submarines. So India's naval capabilities are growing. But when we look at the overall balance of power has to include not just the soldiers, boots on the ground, as you say, on the border. We have to look at all 3 branches of the military. That is, the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. And there, I think we do have a gap, and India needs to focus on, as I said, building its economy so that it has the capacity